is very much like a water department now. We have a very hybrid system where we, because of budget restraints, have been actually pulling all our resources together. So you couldn't actually just take a knife right now and cut our sewer department off. It's a lot broader than that. If you cut a knife right now and separate our sewer department and put it in the water department, it would actually cost the town money because of the way the structure is right now, because of the consolidations we've done. So I mean, there's a very broad discussion. I mean, my recommendation to the council and the commissioners is take your time, do your homework, and get a bill ready that our representatives can bring forward that represent our voters, and actually have a bill that in that way maybe it would actually go to vote and actually win. Right now, the only reason that I got the other night that we need to move this bill forward is because they've already spent $25,000 on this, and they didn't want to waste the money, but our representatives can put a bill for free. It didn't cost this town of Lisbon $1 to have our representatives put a bill forward. I have nothing against the water department. They do a heck of a job. There's no question about it. I mean, the commissioners, I give them credit. They actually stick with it. They do it. It breaks up front. I just don't see the urgency just because I spent money to put this bill ahead. I would rather see it done right and try to look at all the information of the town of how we've actually structured our departments. I mean, we're coming to another budget season again, and halfway through this budget season, the council is going to go home and saying we either need raise taxes or cut services. I can tell you that discussion's already going to happen. And the downfall is the struggle the town's going to have is how do you maintain those services and not raise the tax people's money. And the only way you can do that is actually combine services and be more efficient within the town. You can't get rid of services, you got to find a more efficient way of doing it. And does that mean the idea of integrating and working with the water department and making all departments actually work together? Absolutely, because there's no other way of doing it. Separating departments in this town right now is going backwards from what the national trend is as far as the consolidation. So again, I'm just encouraging you to actually think about it. There is nothing that's to be gained for the town to actually pass this bill tomorrow, because all you're going to do is make something, then you're going to want to go and change it. So why would you put this all through and spend money to put through the voters to say, we're going to vote on it, but really the only reason we're voting on it because later we want to go change it? Isn't it easy just to do it right the first time and make it work? I mean, that's only my opinion. Again, I'm not going to keep saying that, but as someone sitting on the council, one of the things I seem to regret most of some of the things done in the past is we just come up with an idea, you do it without thinking it all the way through. To me, it's much easier to, if it's not going to work, I mean, if you go through all the studies and it's not going to work, then, you know, maybe you do get to have a standalone water district, you know, but the town side is so, it's not cut and dry. And as councilors, you'll see that more and more as you go through it. It's just not a simple solution where you just add one and one together and end up two. But again, I mean, I would just encourage you, I mean, if you feel strongly that the water department really ought to be a standalone water district, just let the bill go through and let them do their district. But as a town councilor, you need to still work on your part of it to make sure that you're providing services to the town in the most effective way and the most, cost effective.
Excellent.
Madam Chair, could I respond to some of those questions?
You know what, I'd rather actually hear from some other folks first and then do the responses all at once.
That's fine.
Okay.
Agree.
Marie, did you have-
Yeah, I'll speak
Okay.
up. I appreciate that. I've got another meeting I'm late for, so just wanted to say that I sat through all the meetings, participated in them, heard the discussions, and our big issue here is ability to work together, because we have the water department that is doing a good job, okay? overall management. One of the big concerns that we've got is people reaching retirement age. We're losing some of our key people that in the future it'd be more difficult to find people to replace them if we have a combined resource there, combined pool. Then I think we'll be in better shape in terms of maintaining the quality of what we're doing. So that's my big concern.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Having gone to Augusta in the spring and last week, I think that we're a work in progress. Little steps, no end result. The end result sits with the voter. Whether we have it this November, or June of 15, or November of 15, the voter is going to tell you exactly what they want. We can put our issues forward. Yes, it would be nice if the town council say, allow this bill to go as is with the revisions that Mr. Levy talked about. But in the end, it's all up to the voters. And all of you who have been elected should remember that. Because you may want to run again and someone's going to say, no, so-and-so did this. You may be out of the question. Ultimately, it's going to be the voters. I understand what the committee did last week, was table it until next week, and that's fine. But if the council does not want to give or say nothing, or give a positive note on it, saying, yes, allow this to go forward, ultimately, in the end, it's going to be the citizens of Lisbon, whether they're a user or just a taxpayer. That's my spin on that.
Thank you, Lorraine. Anybody else who's?
I'd just like to respond to a couple of things. I agree 100% with Mrs. Hale. You know, it's up to the people of the community how they want to vote. But it's also up to the Lisbon Water Board and the Town Council to present the facts to the public so that they can vote, know which way to vote, so that they can make up their own mind on this whole thing. And I agree with Mr. LaRochelle in the fact that there was, and the operative word here as far as I'm concerned, was a terrible communications problem in this community. You ask anybody on the outside, and they would tell you, yes, there is a communications problem on both the water department side and the town side. That's, if I could coin this, water over the dam. I want to start fresh. I want to be able to have the people in this community, as I always wanted to, have them informed so that they know how to make the decision that they want to best represent their community. I agree that we have a wonderful town here, and I'd like to have us move forward. I'd like to have the council start to allow this bill to go forward so that we can begin the process of working on informing the public on the facts so that they know how to vote. Now, as far as one other issue that Mr. LaRochelle brought up, the Lisbon Water Board Commissioners knew nothing about this other bill until we heard it on the street as a rumor. We couldn't get our own local representatives to represent us because they were already on the town representation. We knew nothing about it, so we were forced to go out and get our own. That's water over the dam. I'd like to start over. I'd like to make this thing work. I'd like to have good communications and make this so that it's in the best interest of the people who are paying the bills in this community, and that's the residents. I know that Mr. Wells had something he wanted to say, if you would allow him. I'm sorry?
Are you all done?
Yes, I am.
I just wanted to make a statement that basically this is the next step in evolution of the water department, just like when the town went from a town meeting form of government to the council. It's just another step, and it doesn't mean that because we're a water district that we will not work with the town in helping to share costs in any way we can. That's unheard of, in my opinion. That we have been trying to get, if Roger can ever schedule it, a meeting with the water department, sewer department to see where the cost savings are at. This is just another step in the evolution of the water department, in my opinion.
Councilor Ward, I just want to tell you as a consultant who gets paid to find grant money for local municipalities. Although you're not eligible for rural development money, you are eligible for other sources of funds. There is a lot of competition for this money. The communities who get the money are the communities who are working together, who have a decision that they want to build the infrastructure, they want to rebuild the infrastructure, and make sure that their town moves forward. You are like most every other water and sewer system across the state. You've got old infrastructure, you've got old pipes, you have a lack of ability that you can do to push yourselves forward so that as you're standing in line for looking for grant money, you can say, we're coming in together because we need to address this. You will be head and shoulders above any other town. And that's what it's about, that you work with the water, the sewer, the business community, the industry, to make sure that as you begin bringing in new business, that you have the ability to take care of their water and sewer needs. And that's ultimately what we're talking about. Thank you.
Questions from council? I'm just gonna wrap this up because I think we've heard a lot tonight, pros and cons wise. One thing that's of biggest concern to me is the fact that the Lisbon voters and the representatives of those voters represented what we felt would be the best thing for the town, and for some reason the water department seems, I'm trying, I don't want to put a negative spin on this, but it feels like the water department decided that they needed to find their own backing. So legislators from other parts of the state created a bill for Lisbon. That doesn't make sense to me.
We created the bill.
It doesn't, we're done discussing, this is just my summary.
Well, you're summarizing it wrong, ma'am. We created the bill, we had them.
You didn't create the
represent-
bill, who wrote that bill? Which actual people's names wrote that bill?
Who
Tell me
wrote
who wrote that bill.
The legislation was prepared by a law firm in Augusta.
There you go. That bill was not presented by the people of Lisbon. And that's what gets me. Because we, each one of us at this table, represent the people who voted for us and the citizens of Lisbon. So on the flip side, we do have a good water department, and we do have good people working there, and we have a good system, as has been pointed out. And I feel like the water department is doing what they feel is the best thing for the town of Lisbon. So everybody feels like they're doing the best thing for the town of Lisbon. But we have a serious divide that we have to think about. Because I don't represent the water department, although I may represent the individuals who live in Lisbon who work there. I represent all of the people in Lisbon. And so does every other counselor at this table. And I think that the water department is presenting this because you as a department feel that it's the best thing for the town of Lisbon moving forward into the future for all the good reasons that you gave us.
Yep.
I do feel that. But I also feel the voters and the representatives of those voters did not present this. And in fact, we did present something, but it wasn't acceptable to the water department. So I'm personally torn because I too want to do what's best for the town of Lisbon, but it's my duty to listen to the voters. So I have some hard thinking to do, as does every counselor here. And I just want to make sure that every person here knows is, I'm not on one side or another, and I don't think any other counselors are either, but I think that we owe it to ourselves and the people who elected us to do the best thing. And we need to decide, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna run for reelection or not, but I can't base the future on that, but I do know that I'm gonna have people from this point forward calling me on the carpet and saying, you know what, the town of Lisbon didn't have anything to do with that bill. Some law firm in Augusta and some legislators from another part of Maine supported it. How does that represent Lisbon? When Lisbon's own representatives were not listened to. So that's serious. So it's not that I disagree with any of the hard work and that you do and that you have done on this as a water department. I have to urge council to deeply consider what we're going to say prior to that legislation being introduced. It'll be introduced whether we say yes, no, or maybe. That's beside the point. But I think that it's important for the citizens of Lisbon who elected us and who expect us to represent them, we have to do what we think is the right thing for those people, so.
I'd like, Mr. Levy, before Tuesday's vote, I would like to have a draft of the proposals for each council to read, so we can have it
Absolutely.
by sometime, as soon as possible.
If you send us what you have currently on the floor, and then if you send, the amendment also to that, whatever proposed changes you made.
At least,
So,
so we can look in.
'Cause I don't know how long it is, but I'd like to be able to read it over in advance.
Yes, it's, and the bill,
I was gonna say, the bill, I've sent you everything, so you've got that, and if you've got some language for amendments and you wanna give that to me, I'll make sure it's distributed to the council.
we would do that. We would do that. We will do that.
Yeah, okay.
And I would simply say that I understand exactly, Council Ward, what you're saying. I would say that there's an old expression, there's two things you don't want to see done. It's making legislation and sausage. Okay? What I think at the end of the day, whichever way you come out, no matter how it got there, it's what is going to be best for the town, what are going to be best for the ratepayers of the Lisbon water, whomever it is. And I think that's what you have to do. And ultimately, no matter which way you go, there are going to have to be public hearings, and there's going to have to be a vote, as my new friend in the back said. Because ultimately, the voters will, the people who you represent, they're the ones who decide. Thank you.
I think Bill is right on this. There should be water over the dam. Let's just, there's kind of bad blood on both sides of the issue, and I think both the town and the water department kind of stepped on toes we didn't need to. Let's try to put that behind us and just try to move forward with something positive for Lisbon and do the best for the people of Lisbon.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to
Thanks,
visit with
everybody.
you.
Can I, Shelley, did you have something that you had,
I can make copies to get to you.
okay,
before then.
for the,
Whenever you want.
yeah, wow,
Tomorrow?
that's fine.
And an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes.
With the amendment you're sending us, you're gonna send us to review before Tuesday.
Yes.
Is it the amendment you're proposing a debt ceiling, or that a vote has to occur?
I'm going to prepare two amendments with the approval of, you're not formally asking, but from what I've heard. Number one will be, there will be a second question that if the water district is approved, then within, I'm going to suggest a 2-year period, you would go back to the voters to make a decision on whether it makes sense to also have this be a water sewer district based on study and consultants, etc. That would be the First Amendment. The second amendment would be to put a dollar amount on a debt limit for the Lisbon Water District, again, if it's approved. And it would be in the legislation. And if they were to go above that debt limit, it would have to go to a referendum vote of the residents of Lisbon. And it would be a dollar amount. It would be, we'll come up with the number, and then it'll be this dollar amount. That's the debt limit.
Can you put a sidebar note on what the current debt limit is
Yes.
for the water department?
Yes. Yep.
So it will be a percentage of it?
Normally what's done is you would take your existing debt and you would add a buffer so that you don't have to go running to the voters if you need to spend money.
I wanna say one more thing. I hope this doesn't put an accident. There's gonna be two things that the water department is gonna be going through for next November. One will be this, the other one will be the tank. And they could, one or the other, they could get just a big no.
It's true.
So that's, they're putting a lot of,
At this point in time, we don't know if we're gonna put a tank on.
oh, okay, well.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about
Yeah.
that yet, so.
Might be wise to wait a year.
And Roger, next November, any tank vote would be a municipal referendum
Right,
question,
it
not a
would-
water.
no.
That's on your,
Right,
that's on your watch.
Yeah, but that would be, yeah.
The current outstanding debt for the Lisbon Water Department is just a shade over $3 million.
I don't think, does that include the new bond? That we just put approved?
No, not the one that's been approved, no.
600.
So I have to add that in.
Yeah, 600, 700,
For about
650.
3.7 billion.
Why don't we be sure to have it in print and make sure it's accurate?
I'll count on it.
Okay.
Great, thank you, everybody, for,
All right, so you'll have my.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Levy.
And however it comes out, you'll do good.
Take maybe a 3-minute, maybe a 3-minute break.
Dylan, can I talk to you for a minute?
3 minutes.
You mean?
Bill,
You're
included in this,
Dylan.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Oh, no.
You gave me 5 when I asked for 3, so.
I'll stop the tape recorder.
Okay, thank you.
You made it.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Oh, I know,
I was getting ready to
I'm
do
on
the
the,
highlight.
I'm on the downside of this bad cold, so I'm almost over it, but I didn't have a voice at all earlier today.
Getting ready to do
With that feeling.
Ready?
All set? We are.
All right, we'll get the workshop started. We'll waive the pledge this evening. We have our workshop. Counselor Lunt will join us in a little bit. He's just running a little bit late. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight for workshop. We've been asked to move the National Incident Management System training discussion up to the first item because it'll only take about 10 minutes or so. Mr. Ano can do that for us and then we can move on to the rest of the workshop. We don't have any objections. Okay, great. Okay. Mr. Ano?
Okay, so again, I'm Keith Ano, I'm the emergency manager for the town, and I apologize for having to jump to the front of the meeting, but basically I have the EMA meetings with quarterly at the county tonight. And what the NIMS class is that we're referring to on the agenda is for local elected officials. And there's 2 ways to do that. One way is online, and it's a FEMA-based federal doctrine or way of doing business as a municipality. And Joanne Putman, who is the county EMA, basically will come give the class. And she's very liberal when we do that. It's about how we should manage an incident where leaders, officials, first responders, outside assets fit into a picture if we have some here. The thing that makes it really important though is, right now I'm currently working with FEMA to try to see where we can go with our recent disaster or incident over the holiday to hopefully get reimbursed. It's really important that the executives or the elected officials and town manager all take this class and be up to date as part of that process. Based on the new members of the board and so forth, I'd like to set up that class with Joanne. She will come and give the class in the evening, during the day, on the weekend. She's very flexible. I have not attended the class myself, so I'm going to attend with you so that, you know, if you have any questions later or after the fact, as we do that. And it all really just falls into the town's emergency response plans if needed, another ice storm or something like that. As the emergency manager, the stuff that I'm thinking about are, you know, the snowstorms and power outages and what we would do to help with shelters and so on and so forth in the community. That's really all the NIMS is, National Incident Management System. It falls under the Incident Command System, where all of us fit into that if something happens. So you're familiar with the system. It's really all it is. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Or? I have been told it is. I'm trying to get the, I like to try to quote the regs, but I know that for the stuff we're currently going through, it's all really covered by presidential directive and then DHS Directive 5 and 8. And there's a lot of, as this field develops, is becoming more cumbersome, unfortunately, as far as checks and balances, what we're required to do and so forth. So for this, as a local official, it really just kind of gives you an idea what hopefully I'm trying to do for you, where the first responders fit into it, where CERT teams and volunteers fit into it, where the Red Cross fits into it. And as, you know, hopefully it never happens, but, you know, any big fires or anything like that, how we would augment with outside assets beyond just first responders. Our first responders and our police departments, fire departments, they do this all the time. They're familiar with it. But when you start talking, bringing in assets from higher up, National Guard or whatever, again, it's something getting worse. Or just how we're going to bring in the Red Cross to maybe run a shelter for us. We should all really understand how that works and what's required. If I answered your question.
And just to point out as well, there are certain planning type grants that you can apply for, and you get, the more of us who have this basic or advanced NIMS training, the more points we get on the application. So it doesn't hurt. It's not necessarily a requirement certified, but I know in Wells, for instance, every department head was required to on this, and half of us had to take the next course, so we could check that box off as well. So.
I've taken quite a few of the NIMS and ICS courses as part of my volunteer work. They make sense. And for me, what they did was clarify the chain of command when there's a disaster or a big incident. So I found it enlightening, and they're not difficult, and it sounds like that it would be boring and dry, but it's really really interesting. So I did some of mine online and some of the state trainings and stuff, but I think we'll find it interesting, and I'd be happy to do it again too.
And like you were saying, that all this is going to roll into our long-term plans. And it can also mitigation and security ones out there for stuff that may or may not become available at state and federal level. And everything that we can put in that we're looking ahead really helps our plants go to the top of the list as we apply for
go to the next item, the water department discussion. I had some people working here. Bill, did you want to start for us, or?
Well, I guess, no, I think I'm under the pretense that there are gonna be some questions from the council in regards to this action. Before I get into that, I'd like to introduce Steve Levy from the Maine Rural Water Association, the executive director, and he set up many a water district, or works with all the utilities in the state of Maine, and he's very well versed and knowledgeable in that subject. So I guess I'm just rather wait for questions and see if we can answer them.
Well, I think, I'll just start and then maybe get the ball rolling.
Sure.
I think that, we've been looking at several different sides of, the issues with the water department. We have the utilities committee, that's been meeting a lot with you, and it's been council business for about, what, a year and a half, 2 years, maybe even longer now. Started with, the town deciding that there needed to be a change, and then where it would go. I had asked you a couple of questions to help clarify for myself the, how things were moving forward. I would like some input from, I know that Roger, you and Bill, you have, and then also Fern, while you were on council, also very involved with, the whole idea of the, water department versus a water district. And so I'd like to get some input, from those points of view, so that we can get a discussion started, so that we are clear on what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll go.
Maybe before we could, Madam Chair, just to give the context of why this is here at this moment is, there was a public hearing last week on the bill, LD 1393? 96, thank you. LD 1396, which is the held over bill before the legislature, which would have direct a supplementary referendum on whether or not a water district separate would come up. That public hearing was held. The committee chairs and the clerk contact the town to actively seeking whether or not there was any comment from the council, and if so, what that was. And rather than my just assuming I knew what anyone thought, I suggested that this would be a good subject for a workshop, and then a meeting. It'll be on your agenda Tuesday the 21st, which is the day before we've been directed to provide whatever we're going to provide to the legislature. So that's the context of why this is here again and under discussion.
I can start.
Please do.
Okay, we have been working with the water department, 3 council, Dylan, me, and Eric, and Fern was there, and Eric took Fern's place. But we've been working with them, try to come together to see where there is a common, where we could find common ground to work with this, the whole town work together. And we formed the utilities committee, and it was, I thought it was really going good. It was, we were gonna have a outside management team come in that had nothing to do with anybody, and try to find savings between the sewer department and the water department, so we could, I've always wanted a water sewer district. That was the start of it. That's what I thought it was gonna be. Well, I was the one that instigated it. If I am, I am. We had a petition, out, and we had the people wanted, basically to try to take the water department over to the town. Well, we went in and we had I was done by the legislator, senator and representative.
So Senator Mason
Right.
and Representative Kraft,
Had
They
the bill,
created a bill.
had it done.
Okay.
And they created a bill for the water district. Well, so we went in, and neither one of us got what we wanted, but we were told, because Mr. Wells was there along with me, we were told, point blank, very easily understandable, go back and talk it over. So we did. Geez, thought things were going real well. I really did. It was coming real well. I think Fern would agree we were going good. And, but then their bill, we dropped our bill. Kept it in because it was a district, and it looked like we could have a sewer district and a water and sewer district. Well, they put a lot of money into their bill. I won't say it, how much they added in it, but they put a lot of money into it, and they wanted it to go. And and I'm all for this, and I want Bill and the water department and everybody here to know that I'm for it. But that's just me. And I want the rest of the council to listen to everybody, and they will decide Tuesday what they want.
What do you want, Roger? I don't understand.
I want, my biggest thing is I would like to see the water and sewer district.
but that's not what we're talking about right now, because that's down the road.
Well,
Is that right?
but that's where it all started from. Anyway, so Bill has gone back and he wants to go with the sewer district. The biggest thing that we've discussed amongst some of us is, we want some changes. I would like to see some changes in the bill that they have. So, it's gonna take a while. Bill can explain it better than I can, but it's gonna take a while to get this in, and then the people have to vote on it. And we still have a lot of work to do on this. But on the water district, I just would like to have something in the bill, or the writing of it, or the charter of it, or whatever it is, that will state 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whenever the town decides it would like to turn over the sewer department to the water department, that they will take it without saying no. And so, I'm just saying, this is my opinion, what I would like to see happen. I don't wanna try to influence anybody else. Now that everybody else can talk, but this is what we started, and we've been going very good.
So you started at the outset, you felt that a water sewer district would serve Lisbon best and help
And-
with savings.
And we were going real good,
service.
because like I said, we were gonna get an outside party to come in and do a survey and tell us where we could save by joining, or not save. And if we had kind of half decided that if we could save, we'd move on. If it wasn't gonna save any money at all, then why try it?
Right.
But you have to, we are basically a standalone water department, we're one of the only ones, if not the only one like this in the state. All the towns have something different. A lot of them have either water districts and sewer districts, or water and sewer districts. It's the way to go. And I'm not looking for 2 years down the road. I'm looking 10 years down the road, as the town grows.
Roger, I'd like to know how you think it would be better for us to have a district as opposed to have a department. What would be the benefit to the town?
I don't know, I've discussed it with Fern 100 times, but, I would just think that, a district, the way it would be, a water sewer district, you have, actually, there would be more, board members on the water sewer district board than 3, but either be 5 or 7. I think you would have more, well, I can't say that, because that might not be, because you never know who's gonna get elected, or they're elected. But, working together with, we have, basically 3 people that do all the work at the water department, and I think there's 4 that do all the work at the sewer department. I think if, and Bill, we can go on, because the utilities committee, we've discussed all of this, as you're not gonna get the people in the water department that are my age, or close to it, and they're getting close to retirement, you're not gonna get them to cross-train. But if the district was there, and when you hired somebody new, they had to cross-train, so they could run both. And there was a gentleman from the Richmond Sewer Department, Water Sewer District, on one of our meetings, and he explained it very well, and it really worked well for them. And I listened to him very much, very intently. And they were in a save mode. This is what worked for them, and they saved money doing it, not spend.
You still haven't answered the question though.
What do we want?
About how it's gonna save money?
We don't know yet. We don't, that's why we wanted this independent study to come in, so there was no outside, they would tell us if it was or not. If it saves money, then I would be all for it and go forward. If it doesn't save money, save any money at all, then we'll leave it where it is.
You were all for it before you knew anything about any of that.
Well, I was.
I mean, you were all
Yeah.
about taking over the water department before you would actually ask anybody really anything.
Mr.
Well, I
Goodell,
would-
do you have a question?
No, but at this point.
I can go from there and,
Counselor, excuse me, I'm sorry.
go ahead, I'm all set.
Okay. First of all, I want to make it very clear that the Lisbon Board of Water Commissioners is not opposed to having a sewer district. It has been in the discussion for at least 20 years of having a water district in this community. And when the 2 bills went to Augusta, the Augusta committee, the subcommittee, voted that the towns ought not to pass, and that Roger is absolutely right, we need to go back and talk with each other, and I believe we're still in the stages of talking. We do have information as far as the study is concerned. Shelley does have that. We've contacted the firm in New Hampshire, and she can give us a synopsis of that if this committee wants to hear it. But we're not opposed to having a joint water sewer district. I'm not sure of how it should be set up. Now, we've been advised, the water board has been advised, that we proceed with our bill and have it going to get passed by the legislature. Then it would go to the people to be voted on referendum in November, or whenever it's chosen to be voted upon. And then if it's voted yes, then we'll formulate some kind of a district. Once that happens, there's no reason in the world why an amendment to our district can't be added to include the sewer department for a sewer district. But I think, my opinion is that the council is not prepared to form a sewer district at this time. I haven't heard any conversations from any of the council members about doing that. We're willing to help out, we're willing to work out. I'm not sure how it would be formulated. We're in a discovery process to try to figure that out, whether we have one manager at the top answering both to the sewer end of it and the water end of it, with the current water situation being worked, answering back up, or in the sewer department working back up, or whether the water department take over the whole thing. We haven't discussed that, even as a Board of Water Commissioners, of us, the water department, taking over the whole thing. We do recognize the fact that we do need more members in the committee. How we arrive at those, I'm not sure. One suggestion that was formulated to me is have one member of a 5 committee be appointed by the council, not elected. The other 4 are elected. I like the idea of that because I'm not sure that we can always pull from the people to get people who are willing to run for these particular offices. So if one person was appointed by the council, the water commissioners would be non-existent, so there would be no person appointed from the water commissioners. So that's why I say 4 elected, 1 appointed for 3-year terms or whatever terms we so desire. Those are things that need to be worked out. But the first thing that has to happen is we need to go to the legislature and have the town issue a a letter either one of two ways. One, they have no opposition to this. Two, nolo contendere, we're not taking a stand. Got to go either way. And then the subcommittee would vote. I'm not sure if that clarifies the situation any more than what it already is or not, but I know that Mr. Libby Steve can speak to that, and if you want, he'll add his 2 cents.
I think, for myself, just from the few questions I've had from folks, I wasn't at the meeting with the subcommittee where 2 bills were introduced, and one was removed and one was chosen to go forward. But my understanding at that time was that, in creating a conversation to move forward with the water district, that we had to have at least one bill move forward. So one was chosen to move forward, but it was my understanding that that was, that it needed to have some of the language or some of the similar ideas that the one that was removed had. In other words, a compromise of some sort, or a combination of goals. And I haven't heard that bill changing in any way from the time it was first presented to now. So I guess I just don't know why it hasn't. Is it because the utilities meetings made decided that it was where it needed to be, or has there been discussion in that direction, or if you can shed some light on that for us?
I cannot. I was not at that meeting either. I know Mr. Wells was, and Steve was.
You
So.
have to explain exactly what part of the bills you wanted changed? I mean,
Can be amended.
See, from the perspective of a person who was on the outside of that, I wasn't as involved as some other council members were at that time. So I understood that we had asked Senator Mason and Representative Crafts to put together a bill for us to present it, and I didn't have the understanding that there were going to be 2 bills presented and somebody was going to get shot down. So my understanding was, in order to move forward, we had to have something on the books. So one had to stay on the books, but I don't understand. I wasn't there, like I said, so I don't know why one was picked over the other than the fact that, there were, people were discussing it. I mean, I wasn't there, so I'm just trying to understand.
I was there too, and I really don't know why one was picked over the other either. I mean, I don't think they really came up with a definitive answer, except on the fact that basically the parties were not talking to each other, and the subcommittee didn't want to be stuck in the middle and have to make the decision for them.
Right.
For us, I should say. So, I mean, the retrospect, I think when Roger started this, it was because of personnel problems that he felt was personnel problems on the water department. And those problems, which Roger considered at the time, are no longer there. So I don't know if this is helping or not, and you're just dragging that along.
No, it's answering some questions why I even started it.
Councilor Ward, may
Yes.
I help a little bit?
Please.
I'm Steve Levy. I've been working with water and sewer districts for 32 years now, all over the state. I've helped bring them together. I've helped take them apart. This is how I've spent my life. And I've spent a lot of time in front of the utility committee, who often is asked to referee a local problem. And, they get 2 sides and they're in the middle of it, and they don't know. I mean, much like you don't know what to make of it, they really don't know what to make of it. So there were 2 very strong arguments in opposition to one another that played out in front of a group of people who didn't really quite understand what was going on, or in fact why it was happening on their doorstep. So what they do is, being uncomfortable being the referee, is they called a timeout, which is, I think we all know what that means. And they said, go home and talk, because it was clear from the discussion that there was not good communication within this town over all of the issues. And frankly, having done Maine politics my whole life, it's not a big shock, and you're not a whole lot different than anybody else. Anyway. So the municipal bill was not brought forward. The water district bill was carried forward, and basically the message to everyone, and also directed at me, because I'm the agent of this, is go home and talk, which has in fact happened, and I think a lot of progress has been made. The problem is that the progress that has been made is not necessarily in the timeline that the legislature needs, because the Lisbon Water District bill is going to be heard at a work session next Wednesday, the 22nd. So at the hearing last week, they said, we came back and they said, what does the town want? And there was nobody there from the town. So they reached out to the town, and the water department reached out to the town, and the utility committee said, listen, we got to go back. We'd like your support. If you can't support us, at least say we don't hate it, and let's move forward. So I think you're in a position to say, does this water district bill make sense? And if you think it makes sense, then actually what will happen is that this will go to the voters next year, at the end of this year, and the voters decide whether they in fact want a water district to be formed, which it would, or not. If it's not formed, then end of story, you'll stay where you are and you'll continue. You've got a nice town, you've got a really good water system. What you have, I think, is a very, very archaic political structure where it's a water department within a municipality, and they're in charge of some stuff, and you're in charge of the other stuff, and it creates issues which are not surprising. Now, there was a mention of Booth Bay Harbor, which was, as far as I know, the only one like it, which was a separate water commission within a town. And if you think you have issues, Booth Bay Harbor and Booth Bay have been fighting over water for almost 100 years, at least 100 years. And it was sort of a main fight. And what happened, which was interesting, is you had a situation where in Booth Bay and in Booth Bay Harbor you had two town managers, both of whom were from away, who didn't know the local situation, and they said, this is crazy, let's come together. And what they did is the Booth Bay Harbor situation, like you had, went away, and they created a separate water district, which was able to get a lot of grant money because of special circumstances. It worked well, and in fact, they have recently merged with the Southport Water Department. So what you took is an awkward situation in Booth Bay Harbor, which went away. They merged with East Booth Bay Water District, which went away. You created a new institution, and the Southport Water Department went away. So I think what we're really talking about here tonight, when all is said and done, is should this question be put to the voters next December or next November of do you want to do a water district, do you not want to do a water district, and that prior to that, there would be a series of hearings where you would have a discussion. Is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? What are the advantages? Do you save money? Do you not save money? As far as I'm concerned, when all is said and done, this is more about water quality and good service than money. That's what I've learned in 32 years. Not that you don't think about money, but you've got a scarce resource. You have no idea how inexpensive your water is. And good. I have been at rate hearings where I almost needed armed guards to get back to the car because people were so mad and it was so expensive. I feel like Johnny Carson. Your water rates are so low that you are not eligible money from USDA. That you would actually have to double your water rates before you could get USDA grant money. That's what a good deal you have. So I think you've got, and I can speak frankly, I work for departments, I work for districts. I can't say one is better or not better. What I do know is this, that you've got a group of dedicated, not just these people, but over the years, you've had a really good group of water commissioners. That's all they do. They do water. And they've done a good job that they eat, breathe, smoke, drink water. No smoking, no smoking. I take that back. There's no smoke. That would be a hooker, by the way. There's no, that's what they do. And you've got a good system here with good people, good staff. My perspective, and I'm speaking, or I'm their rep, but I can also speak earnestly, is let this thing go to a vote, have an earnest discussion prior to the vote about what the ratepayers and what you want to do. If you want to leave it the same, leave it the same. If you want to change it, not change it. Moving back to Mr. Bickford, and I don't know if I'm older than you or younger than you.
Well, we don't need to go there.
Okay. I know you have more on your chin and less on your top, so we'll leave it at that. There have been discussions, and I think the legislature is kind of urging you to go in this direction, to create a merged water sewer district. There are between 35 and 40 in the state. You've got neighbors who are merged, and you probably don't even know it. So Sabata's sanitary district is in fact a water sewer district. We just changed their charter so that they could do water and sewer, same board. Nice place. Richmond has another one. Brunswick, Topsom has a merged water sewer district, but you have a Topsom sewer district, and there's all sorts of different ways. I think you can find the one that's going to work best for you. My suggestion to you as a council and to my friends who are in the water department is the following. Number one, I would encourage you to move forward with this water district because I think it makes sense. And the most compelling reason that I have is the water commissioners and the staff do a good job. It works. I mean, it works. They do good, and it's cheap to boot, which makes Roger happy. It works. That would be suggestion number one. Suggestion number two is I would amend the existing bill, which we can do together, I would hope, to put in a second question within the charter, within the proposed bill, saying that if the voters decide to establish a district, that within a date certain, you go back to the voters and ask if they also want to create a water sewer district. And then you can take the step. What I think is very important as far as the water sewer is they are very, very different businesses. Taste for starters. And what I think, and I know Shelley has been in communities, it's a very good firm in New Hampshire that can help you come in and do a study to see if it makes sense to make recommendations. The town may not want to do it. The people may not want to do it. I think that outsiders with very capable credentials can come in and give recommendations. The other person who I would recommend you invite is the superintendent of the Old Town Water District, whose name is Frank Carney, who happens to be on my board, and he's an ex-potato farmer from Aroostook County, and he ran the Mars Hill Water Sewer District. He came down to Old Town to do the water district, and he found in his lap that the town asked him to take over the sewer district. So I would ask him as a first, and they're roughly your side. As a first-hand approach, he'd come down. I'd probably have to buy him. I'm willing to do that. Of talking to the utility committee to move forward. So that's my suggestion. Step one is a district. yes or no, the voters get, they decide. If it's yes, it will take some time to do that transition, and in the time that it takes to do the transition, in 2 years or 18 months, you come back to the voters, it's in the legislation, there's no choice about it. You come back, and at that time, the utility committee and the town will have hired to do a study, come in, to talk to Frank, to talk to Broadbent, to talk to Paul Moore and all the guys who do it, and then you can say, you know, this is a great idea. Now this is just crazy. That's 32 years of experience, for what it's worth.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
The way it is, it's a water district, correct, correct me if I'm wrong. If it goes through as a water district, and you decide you wanna take a bond, the people have no say, the bond will not go up for vote, is that correct? As a water district?
That's not correct. That's not correct. Very often,
The bonds are still voted on even as a water district? Is that how it
well,
goes?
what I would suggest, my recommendation, I would say it depends. If that's an issue,
I
what,
think the people should be able to still, I'm all for the water district, I am.
then my suggestion, which I can also, because I create an amendment to the bill, which would set a debt limit for the Lisbon Water District, X number of dollars. I mean, I don't want to have to go up for a vote every time they need $20 to,
No, I agree.
to have a debt limit, and that any time there was a change to the debt limit, it would go to the voters within Lisbon. And that is also, and there are many charters that are that way. That's something else. So in other words, what we would do is we would see what the debt limit is, what the debt is now. I'd like to give them, whatever we decide, a cushion, so they don't, because it's expensive to do these referendums, is give them a cushion, and then any debt beyond that would come back to the voters, and that could also be put in the legislation for your approval.
So the way it's written right now, what does it say?
It's silent on debt limit.
That's one of my biggest concerns, and I expressed that already, is, as is right now, as a town, anything over $100,000 has to go to the voters on a ballot to be voted on. And that's one of my biggest concerns right now, is, not that I don't think the water commissioners do something responsible, but when $250,000 on something, that's not, as it is written right now, it wouldn't go to the voters on a ballot. And I think that's one of my biggest hurdles right now, and I believe it's a couple of councilors' biggest hurdles, is that dollar point where it doesn't have to go out to vote. So say the council supported this, I'm thinking hypothetically, it went to the utility committee in Augusta, they supported it, passed legislation, the voters vote in November, yep, we'll have a water district. And then we decided we wanted to do an amendment, as you talked about, for a debt ceiling. How can I sleep at night knowing that for sure an amendment will happen for the debt ceiling? Is there something that says, does it have to go to the commissioners for that amendment to happen? How does that amendment go in place? I guess I'm asking.
No, it's a good question. What we would do is we would put in an amendment at the hearing next Wednesday. So, I mean, this is not a trust me kind of thing. So we would put in an amendment saying that the debt limit of the Lisbon Water District is $5 million. Whatever. I mean, I would have that figure, whatever it is. And what you do basically is that you have all of that, okay, and a reasonable amount so that you don't have to run to the voters. I'll give you for instance, And I would do that before the hearing, so that on Tuesday night, when you meet, you would have that amendment in front of you, and you would be voting on that. And hopefully we can get a letter saying we support it, or at a minimum, we don't hate it. And on a Wednesday, at the hearing, we could say, hand in hand, kumbaya, this is what Lisbon wants to do with these two changes, which everyone agrees to. We're going to amend it so that we come back in 2 years and have a sewer district referendum. And we also want to change the bill so that we have a debt limit so that you can sleep at night. And you would, that would be good. And you can have it, and you could have that on Tuesday evening.
Can I say something? All of that has to be approved for the PUC beyond a certain amount. We have public hearings, and it's not just gonna slip by in a commissioner's meeting. It has to go out, it has to have public hearings, so.
No, I totally understand that, and I understand we have public hearings here, but that's what the public says at public hearings isn't always how the council votes. And I think if you're gonna vote on a $2.5 million project, maybe more than 7 people should say if it goes through or not. And even if you have 2 or 3 committees that it goes to, that doesn't mean that's what Lisbon people go to the public hearing. And that's what I'm talking about for having a ballot. And that's what I talk about having a dollar point that has to go out to vote. I mean, that's what, I'm not saying that, I didn't mean that it was gonna slip through a commissioner's meeting and no one's not gonna know. It was not what I was implying by any means. I'm implying that I want to make sure that the citizens will have an opportunity to voice their opinion if it's in a ballot box on an item, such as they did with the water tank. They did something that they voted the way they wanted to. And that's what I was referencing.
I think what you're asking for and what Steve is saying are basically two different things. Because with what Steve's saying, we would have to go to the voters to raise our debt limit. What you're asking for is any project over a certain amount.
Like a per item
To
thing,
be
the way we do with the town
voted,
side.
right.
That's my next thing I was gonna talk about.
But, I mean, the reason you guys got that now is because I pushed that on the Charter Commission. So, but for the water department, for the infrastructure, I mean, Frost Hill's what, $400,000? $650 to do Frost Hill. So, if we wanted to do little things, $100,000 would not be
But it's
adequate.
$100,000 because that's what we have right now. I just threw that out there. as
Well,
a-
I'm just saying that what Steve is saying is in order to raise our debt limit to bond something, we would have to come back to the voters. Basically, same thing. This is that we're not putting a dollar limit on it, on how, we're just saying that once our bonds are paid off, then we could, go back, but, yeah.
And the other thing which is important is that if the district is going to spend money or borrow money, ultimately, they have to go to the ratepayers to support the rates to do that. This is not, believe me, I've seen the book, this is not a water system that's sitting on a lot of cash and they're gonna be frivolous. If they spend money, they have to, number one, if anytime they borrow money for anything over 12 months, they have to go to the PUC for approval to issue securities. That's number one. And number two, in order to pay off any debt, they have to go to the ratepayers. Ratepayers have to give the approval, including the town, who's probably the biggest ratepayer, by the way. I'm guessing you're the big dog on the neighborhood, that they have to go through you. 30% is 30%, so you're the man. But this is, what you have there is called a model charter, and the model charter says that it can be either silent on a debt limit or put in a debt limit if it's an issue for you, and the rest of the board will put in a debt limit. And this is what they have to borrow. If they go over that, they have to go to the voters. What you don't want to do, and you heard, I didn't know the man, if you have a disaster, if bad things happen, and bad things, it's not an if, it's a when. What you don't want to do is get into a situation where you have to spend money and you have to wait 4 or 5 months to do a referendum vote to fix a massive problem. That's what you don't want. You need to be able to function. But any big project, go back to the voters and get a yay or a nay.
I think that was one of the other questions that I had.
Do you need more water, by the way?
No, I could.
Okay.
I think I had a couple of folks bring up to me the idea that we recently had on referendum, the idea of putting a new water tower up, and the voters chose not to accept that. So I think one of the fears that people have is that they won't have a say in that. That a project like that will move forward without the people in Lisbon having the opportunity to say, no, we don't want that. It wasn't a small margin of the voters
Yeah.
who voted against it. So I think that's one of the concerns that I've listened to from residents, just wondering, is that going to happen, or could somebody just put a water tower in my backyard if they deem that it's necessary for the town for the greater good? I won't have a say in it anymore. So how would that work?
Again, I think the issue is going to be the debt limit will set a cap on what the utility can borrow. We would create a debt limit that we would look at the debt, we would give them enough room so that they can do normal business, and then create a debt limit so that if they're going to borrow more money over a certain amount, it would need to go to a referendum vote. And I think that's the protection that, if you're nervous, that's where it would be.
And still a backup for the PUC too.
Yes.
Well, and they're pretty strict.
The PUC
It's-
would be the first line of
if
Yeah.
there frankly are, there are, having been on the other end, there are just a number of ways of stopping a project. It's just, there just are, because people should be afforded their democratic rights. That's, so, it's okay. I think there's always a sort of tension when you do something new about, what if this, what's the worst possible thing? And I think that's what you're talking about. I think you brought up the point of, are they going to spend money like drunken sailors? I don't even know if there are any drunken sailors left anymore. Well, there may be a couple in Lisbon, but actually one of my neighbors is. But retired. Retired Navy. So what you do is you put in protections. So the two things that I've heard, up from the gossip is, we want you to take the sewer too, by the way, which is it's so different from last year's discussion, by the way, that, but that's why I love what I do, is because things do turn. And I think you leave it open and you force it that's in writing, yes, we're going to have a referendum, and yes, people get a vote. They get a vote. You got it. There were issues about debt. You put in a debt limit, you get a vote again. And I think those are the ways. Again, I think what we're talking about, when all is said and done, is it working now? It's not. It just isn't. It just is not working. And you've got a good board. You've always had a good board. They're elected. That's what they do. So let's go to your strengths. Let the water district go. Get the protections you need for debt, and move forward with the utility committee, because Roger's absolutely right. If you look at it, if you can get good, strong management to run a water and a sewer department and take this town where it needs to be, that's what happens. When I was driving here and I was listening to National Public Radio, and they were talking about the Charleston spill, lost their water supply. I've done this before. And they said that in all the agencies and all the protections and all the stuff that you had to do, no one ever looked at the fact that there was this huge chemical plant a mile upstream from the intake. And I think that's unfortunate. Embrace what you got and make it better.
I can get Fern to speak.
I was just going to ask if there are other folks folks who've attended the utilities committees this weekend? Please do.
Again, speaking from the town council, and we're saying not anymore, but, from when we were, and again, Roger was there, I mean, and Bill will attest, I mean, communications between the water department and the town has always been interesting, to say the least, before both of us ever got there. Just two questions I didn't ask before I moved forward. Just leaving with this bill, that if it goes through, they give it a blessing next Tuesday.
Yes.
If it goes through and passes, will that make the water department run any more efficient or save money?
What it'll do is in fact create a separate standalone district.
Standalone, I realize, but I don't believe the bill will save the water department any money, or allow it to run efficiently. It's basically just a management supervisional change of the water department, correct, right?
It is a change in ownership and governance. Yes.
Basically, it's a on-paper change, in a sense. The water department won't run any differently than it does today. It's just basically an on-paper change.
If I can.
Well, let me finish.
No, you asked me the first, so let me follow up. If, for instance, a water district were created and it were to borrow money, it would be able to borrow money over a period of 40-year amortization versus a 30-year amortization that the town has, and in fact, on new debt, if approved, would be less expensive. So I would say on a debt basis alone, yes, you would be able to save money on just that one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Again, I've had, in the past, commissioners said they wouldn't want to go over borrow 30 years on anything anyways, and that's just.
That's going from the town,
Yeah.
borrowing money from the town, though.
Yeah, but again, it's a long term. Just go back to the beginning again, I'll just state just what I represent, and then I'll move on, is both myself and Roger were both on the council. One of the things that we had actually been addressed, and again, we weren't reacting from ourselves, we were acting from the people that we represent, that there was concerns, that, from the way the water department in the town communicated. And, there was concerns that are starting to affect the residents, and a lot of people seen some of those concerns. Roger actually, not personally because he wanted to, but from his people that represent him, went out and actually did a petition to find out who actually felt strongly about the water department and how they were being managed at the time, who didn't. And it was overwhelmingly the people that told him that they had concerns. So as a council, we actually did two things. We actually started talking about what our actions could be and what we couldn't do. And then secondly, we actually put it out to the voters, the democratic way of putting it out to the vote to say, on a straw vote, it wasn't binding, would the people of Lisbon feel strongly, how would they feel about taking over the water department into the town? And there was quite a few people voted. It wasn't a big margin, but it was a majority of the people that actually voted to direct us as a council to actually move in that direction. And again, that's, as a council, that's how you work. I mean, if the majority of people vote to do something, typically you react on that. We actually had some discussions at that point in time, and we found at that time the best action was the idea of putting a bill through to actually merge the town with the water department. A couple of things were going on at the time, what's gonna happen with the town again this year, is the idea of, it sounds really simple to actually say just merge our sewer department into water, but as everyone knows, I mean, that is way more difficult than just a sound, because our water department is not just a standalone water department today. We actually, over the last couple of years, in a way of actually saving tax dollars, have actually consolidated much of our public works, our sewer, and our wastewater to actually become a savings.
Sewer department, not water department.
Sorry about that. It's kind of like the other day in the newspaper that congratulating the water department on cleaning the sewer the drains, right? You love that when you read. Anyways, the sewer, the wastewater, the runoff, and the public works integrated, and that's how we came with quite a bit of savings to try to keep the budget going. And the thought process was, if we were able to take the water department into that mix, it would be a consolidation, it would be a somehow streamlined way of actually trying to make it more efficient. Whether it's possible or not, I don't know, but we actually put the bill together to move forward. We actually had two state representatives, Dale and Garrett, moved that forward with us, and that bill didn't cost the town any money to put forward. It was basically, they were doing it because they were representing the people of what, in a very simple process. It went through. said, they felt that there was a battle going on between the two departments, which should have been very evident because two separate bills going two different directions usually don't mean that they're working together pretty well. And it was sent back for us to actually discuss and not vote upon anything, but actually to sit down and talk. So myself and Bill and the commissioners and the council, we actually talked about joining a committee together to sit and meet and have multiple meetings where we actually had the three commissioners, we had three council, we actually had citizens, three citizens. Steve was there, Mr. Perry, which wasn't able to be here tonight. And we sat through a number of meetings where we actually looked at the whole gamut, not all of it because we had limited time, about a town that actually the sewer, water was actually run by the municipality. It was actually a town-run department. We've seen one that was just a water standalone. We've seen a water sewer. We've seen some hybrid stuff that was kind of unique. We had everything to speak. And it was a lot of information. I learned a lot. As being a counselor, you learn a lot about this stuff in a short period of time. What we all, I think, agreed upon is there was potential savings for the town on both the municipal and the water side if we would actually be able to make the town work as one and not separate entities. And again, other people on the commission can speak to that, and on the commission committee can speak to that, that are separate from the water and the council. I mean, but found from every meeting of every night, everybody said if you can work together, you can run a more efficient shift that actually is better in the sense of saving money financially and manpower, when it comes to equipment. We went to quite a few of these meetings. At the last meeting, we actually had a discussion. And at that night, we actually, as a committee, spoke about what our action was. And it was actually Steve Warren asked the question, so how do we move forward with the legislation? And pretty much that night, we decided, I thought, that we were not going to move any bills forward, and that we were going to take the time to build something, do it correctly, do it in a manner that actually was going to take enough time that we actually had everybody's input, and actually had, the thing that I think was nervous about the bill is, typically when you run a bill through the state, your local representatives actually represent the people. That's what Dale and Garrett, that's what we voted them for. And the person that sponsored this bill was from where? Where was the representative from that sponsored this bill?
There's
Senator Jackson, Allagash, Maine.
Allagash, Maine.
Senator Jackson and also two other members of the utility committee. So there were three members of the utility committee that sponsored the bill.
Did either one of them ever live in Lisbon or anywhere around this area?
No, that's accurate. But there are also three members who sat through maybe 100 different water district charter discussions.
Totally understand. Well, what they didn't know, the people that represented and brought this bill forward, were basically just people that were, I'm not going to say paid, but actually doing people requested for them that they weren't representing the town as representatives of our town. And I feel that's probably why this bill was actually brought back the other day and asked what the town's take was on it, because our two representatives still are not there in that room representing the town. So at the end of the meeting, in a sense, we actually said that we were going to sit down and talk. I mean, I was getting off the council, and I knew that there would be a good discussion moving forward, that we could actually bring all the information together, do the outside audit, see what could be, how we can work together.
Turning it off.
I think it's a really interesting training. And then, usually, every spring,
There we go. Hot shot superstar.
every spring.
he's got one right there, too,
Up
so-
in Augusta, there at the Civic Center, the
Yeah.
MEMA has it's called Maine Prepares Conference.
Thanks, Mark.
And it's like a two and a
I'm
half
relying on
day
you
conference.
for this.
Is that town manager search? Yeah.
So that's a good one.
Never
for
happened.
NIMS training, yeah. All right, we all set?
Yes,
Okay,
You're right there.
we'll come back to order, and we have one final agenda item, the town manager search. And I asked Mr. Houston to put together a comparison for us and for some input, since he's has some experience in this. And
You had three entities make a proposal, and those were included, I think, in the packet that you got. And I mean, the full ones are there. What I did was just do a one-page cover sheet for you. Everybody's offering essentially the same services: needs assessment, recruitment, resume review, recommendations, interviews, background check, second interview, offer, and negotiation, so everybody will help in that. If you look at municipal resources, which is the column on the right, they have out their search a little differently than the other two. They will prepare essay questions and send them out to the folks who they believe are the top, and they'll use that as part of their recommendation. Maine Municipal is the only one of the three who has a formal, this is how we rate them. The other two will discuss that with you, and you get a rating system, but it may not be, you know, a matrix like this. Interestingly, Municipal Resources is the only one of these who offers a limited guarantee, if you will. If they find and the council hires leaves within a year, other than because of death or dismemberment or because the council fired him or her, research for no cost, which is probably not a bad guarantee. I'm guessing they haven't had to make good on that ever because of the way they write it. The costs, you can see, are similar across the board. Maine Municipal's at $4,900. The other two are at $5,000. Maine Municipal does include within their $4,900 copying costs, travel, and background check. The other two companies charge for travel and copy. Everybody charges for advertising, which makes sense. Depending on where the town chooses to advertise, you're going to spend a couple grand to do this, and so it would be there. It would not be out of line to ask folks to send somebody to a council meeting, and you can look them in the eye and see if you like them or dislike them. I'm not sure we could get people here on Tuesday, but certainly if the council wants that, I could make that request. Maine Municipal, just to give you a little background, Maine Municipal, you know, is the organization that the town and several others belong to. Dave Barrett heads up this search, and it would be David who, if the council chose him, that's who you'd be working with in this. There are other people within MMA who would help with the day-to-day stuff, but 95% of your communication would be directly with Mr. Barrett. He's been doing this, I want to say 22 years or so, and he's got a lot of experience. Eaton Peabody Consulting, the law firm of Eaton Peabody has been around for over 100 years. The consulting group is a little less than that. And this is essentially a two-person operation. Don Garish, who's the former town manager in Brunswick and a former president of the International City Managers Association. And then Richard Metivier, who was the finance director of the city of Lewiston for longer than I can remember. So both of these gentlemen have a lot of experience in municipal government. I know them from working with them both on the Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust. I think Dick may still, one of them is a retired member of that board now. Mr. Garish just took the interim job in Wiscasset, and I think that's a 3-day-a-week, $500 a day job, so Metivier would probably be the person we'd be dealing with, although Don's input would certainly go along there. Municipal Resources is based in New Hampshire. I know less about them than the other two. I can tell you that they rely on consultants a lot as opposed to a built-in staff. one of the consultants that they use is Jim Bennett, who is a Lisbon native and has been a city manager in Old Orchard, Lewiston, and is now up in Presque Isle, and who this fall will be the president of the International City Managers Association. He will be the third president that Maine has had, I think more than any other state, which is interesting, but I just throw it out. So those are the organizations that have let us know they'd be interested in helping us. There are towns that do it on their own. I'm going to tell you, you don't save a lot. I mean, you might say, oh, it's $5,000. Of course, we'd save that, but by the time you add in your time and effort and all the copying and everything that goes on here, you'll sort of wish you maybe had somebody else. But I don't have a recommendation of any of these. I think that we get good service with any of the three of them. And
Can I ask a question? Please. Let's say we pick one of these and he comes up with a candidate. Are we gonna set up a board of people to interview him and then decide which one they like? And then-
Oh, absolutely. The first thing that all three of these are suggesting is that you need to draw up what you want in a candidate, and they would meet with the board, session like this, or public hearing, or I mean, there are towns that when they start this process have a public hearing or two, and invite everyone to come in and say, what do you want in a town or city manager, and list all those qualifications. And I mean, it's the old, okay, if there were 18 people who said this, then let's include that. If there's only one person who said this trait, then we can leave that one out. But so any of these guys, any of these companies will help you define what it is that you want in a candidate. And once you know that, then they can tailor the advertising that they're going to do. We want somebody who's strong in finance and who can run a marathon in under 3 minutes or 3 hours, or whatever qualifications you have. They will include that. They will then do the initial. They'll get a number of applications that will come in. My best guess is that in a town like Lisbon, which is the population we have, the location that we have, the fact that we've had a fairly stable management situation over the last decade and a half, that there'll be a big pool. It would not surprise me to have 30 or 35 people apply. So they'll do an initial winnowing down, and if the council wants to see every one of those resumes, then they would be available. So you could say, well, gee, I don't know why you left this person out. These are open. But the primary thing that a search firm like this can help you do is get to the first cut. And let's say that you say, well, we want to know the top 10. They can do that. And they'll say, here are 10, and they'll either rate them for you or just say, here who we think are the top 10. You have an opportunity to go through them and to say, all right, we've looked at this. What do you think? And they'll say, well, we think you ought to interview these 5. You say, well, we want to interview 6 because we like this person. Or we don't know why the heck you included this one in your top 5. We don't want to interview him or her. So you'll have that opportunity. And then, obviously, the interviews. I've participated both as an interviewer and an interviewee in municipal government. I went to Minnesota for a job once, and the interviewing committee was every department head in the town. And through them, there was a committee that was a 9-person council, so there were 3 members of the council and 5 members of the public. And if you got through them, then you had an interview with all 9 council members. Halfway through the second, I can tell I'm not going to be happy here, given the way this is set up. And so we mutually agreed that we wouldn't waste anyone's time on some more. I've also interviewed where the entire thing is before the council and that's it. You don't involve members of the public. As somebody who's helped hire several managers and several department heads in other communities, it's the same thing. Some communities like to have a dual stage, like it involves some citizens. If you do, the question then becomes, how does that work? And how do you weight those recommendations? And that's something you would have to work out early on. But yes, ultimately, the decision of hiring a city manager, town manager in this community has to be done by you. I suppose you could delegate it to somebody else, but I think that your constituents, and keep in mind, I'm one of your constituents, would be really annoyed if you did that. We vote for people to make decisions and to be responsible for them. So you would have to do that, and you could decide. It may be that the council would want to meet and say, whoever we hire has got to get it. There are 7 of us that has to get at least 5 votes, because we don't want to have anyone start his or her tenure with a 4-3 vote. We're going to make it at least a 5-2 or a 6-1. I'm not sure I would suggest making it unanimous, because if there's somebody who is always holding out, you may end up actually with a less strong candidate, simply because you want to get to unanimity. But I would recommend that you might have a supermajority of some kind. And again, that's something that you should discuss when you hire this person, so you'll know going in, what are our rules? You're not going to wait till you get the candidates and you say, okay, let's decide the rules.
Like
And-
each of these, I'm sorry to interrupt, but each of these organizations help walk us through that process to see what we
Yeah.
think is gonna help us
Yeah,
do best.
but they would not be making the decision on it.
Right.
They would, at
They
best,
help us.
they would be saying, choose from among these 5 or 6 people.
Well, what I was thinking is, if they choose, let's say, we get 5 or 6 people in, to go, I was kind of thinking about having somebody on the council interview them and see if they like them or whatever, then the whole council could do the whole,
Yeah, I think at one point I had talked with a couple of people, I know Dylan, and I can't remember who all, but maybe a selection committee of some sort that includes a couple of council members and a couple of community members as one of those steps in narrowing down the pool, just to take advantage of the broader expertise outside the council.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But again, you want to, at the beginning of this, decide, how are you gonna pick that?
Right.
Are you going to say, well, let's get a couple of ex-councilors? Are you gonna say, let's get somebody who's never run for elected office before? Is it gonna be a 3-person, 2 councilors and 3 other people? You
Right.
need to make that decision early on and then look for them. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, from the standpoint of anyone who's applying for this job, is that you want to have the process be one that is fairly straightforward. If somebody applies knowing that there's a 6-step procedure, and that's fine. If that's spelled out and they say, okay, that's the risk I'm going to take. It's going to take 6 steps, and then there's nothing wrong with it. But if somebody applies thinking it's a 2-step procedure and it turns into 6, they're going to be frustrated with you, and that's going to show up in how you do your actual hiring.
Right.
So you think
There is,
that-
I wanna say the realities of travel can be an issue too. If somebody applies here from New Hampshire or New York, saying they have to drive all the way over here, you know, they don't wanna come over here half a dozen times to get
Right.
jerked around and told, hey, sorry, get out of here. You know, we wanna be reasonable with our time demands on the person and all the candidates. You know, you don't wanna bring in too many people for too many interviews.
And you want to be reasonable on your own time. I mean, this is this is going to be a time-consuming effort. When we hired your father, the screening group was very informal. We didn't use MMA or anyone else, but we had a screening group. I was part of that. And interestingly, had not included Kurt in my list of people who should have interviewed them. I don't know, good or bad. We made copies of the resumes and everything, and the members of the board of selectmen who were, and I was not at the time, who were involved, had a committee, and I remember that there were just meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to whittle the list down. And I think that, you know, there was some feeling that maybe the hired wheel search committee or search firm would have helped, but I don't know. However you do it, you know, you're going to get questions will arise, and somebody's going to apply for the job and want to keep it confidential because they don't want their employer, especially if they work for another town, knowing that they've applied until and unless they're a finalist. And that's not an unreasonable request for somebody in the public sector to make. And again, it's something you need to decide, because if I don't want everyone knowing I've applied for this job unless I'm a finalist. If you're looking at the non-finalist pool, it means that you've got to remember too, you can't be going and telling somebody, oh yeah, we looked at Mike Houston's resume, and you know, I have somebody call, you know, the town council and wherever I'm working and say, gee, what do you think of this guy? And then when I'm not even a finalist, that's a bad thing. As I say, I think any of the three of these would do well. They would serve the town well. Two I have experience with, again, are MMA and Peabody, and I just offer that.
Mike, which one of these did you say had a warranty for 1 year?
Municipal resources.
Okay.
So if we just pick one of these, and we just tell them what we're looking for, tell them everything, what we would like to have as a requirement for the town manager, they could screen everything and just give us so many applicants that they feel, so we really don't need a board. Right, the more information you can convey to them when you first hire them, the better job they're gonna do at filtering it out. Or doing the initial filter. And I think that any of these guys, at a minimum, whether you involve public, allowing them to come in and you know, spout off about what should or should not be included or not. I mean, I think you should expect that you would have an hour to an hour and a half with them, and they'll ask you questions. Well, do you want somebody who's a whiz on money and less good on legislation? Do you want somebody who's a whiz on procedures? Do you want somebody who's really great with technology? I mean, they're going to ask you all this, and you're going to get to rank those. The most important thing we think is communication. But what's communication? Or the most important thing we think is, or very little importance to us is he knows how to take us technically from where we are to the next, whatever the next step is with technology. Because, I mean, let's face it, you can hire technology. Maybe you don't need a manager who's going to be involved in the minutia of setting up a new system. You want somebody who's a generalist. You want somebody who's in the when the consultant we hire meets with you, those are the questions you're gonna be asked. You're gonna, each of you is gonna have to eventually say, this is the profile we want. And once you have that profile, if you put some thought into it, you put some effort into it, and the consultant is worth, in this case, his salt, because none of these are women, then that, the ads are gonna be tailored. There's always a few outliers, but, you know, they're gonna be tailored to bring in people who fit this. And, you know, and I would just throw out that, you know, if you decide to do this and you don't want me around when you're doing your meeting with them to say, these are the characteristics you want, I'm not gonna be offended, because I haven't decided whether I wanna apply for this job yet or not. I don't want to be in the room when you're preparing that profile, and trying to slant it so that you'll only hire me. I mean, I'm willing to, you don't want that character. No. But I say that, and I also say that because I have both done this work before and because I've known hiring, I don't want to not be part of putting this together. I'm more than happy. I mean, I think you hired me, and by the way, I don't think on Tuesday night I said thank you to you. I said thank you to the town, but I do want to say thank you to you for the confidence that you've expressed in hiring me. But I think when you hired me with the presumption that I've got expertise I can give you, and I'm willing to do it. But with this particular search and this particular task, if there are times that you need me to step out of the room, so that you don't think I'm influencing it one way or the other, no matter what decision, I'm not going to be offended by that. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out.
To me, this is going to be a crucial point for Lisbon, who we hire as a town manager. And I know that it is time sensitive. I know that we're coming into probably the toughest budget season Lisbon has ever encountered. It's going to be able to take a lot of time. And I'll just say from the beginning that I really want to be hands-on with this search for a new manager. If we need a counselor or counselors, I would definitely volunteer to be on a committee for a search for a new manager, just putting that out there. But my other piece is I spent a lot of time reading through all three of these proposals, and I didn't really see a big difference between any of them. And I know from working that you can make anything look good on paper, but being a person that does interviews, sometimes when they come in, it's a different story. And I would like to see a representative from each of these organizations come to the council and kind of explain what they do and see if it's somebody that the council thinks we can work with for 12 weeks. I know this is a time-sensitive matter, and we want to vote on this and hire somebody. I don't know if it's an option that we, start these at 5:30 Tuesday night and have one come in at 5:30 to create a timeline. I don't know. But I would definitely like to talk with first from each of these organizations to kind of gauge them, see who they are, and see if it's somebody that we can work with. But that's my own take. But I think this is a very serious time for Lisbon. Mike has definitely given us a lot of direction, a lot of great guidance, and I know that he's going to continue to do that. But I think we need to really think hard on this, and I know that we all want to get this behind us and move forward, but we've got to act smart and not just with time. So that's my 2 cents, what it's worth.
I'll give my 2 cents. I'll vote on whatever committee, I don't wanna be on a committee to hire. I'll meet him and shake his hand, and I'll go with what the committee recommends, but.
We as a council should meet with whoever like the top 2 or 3 candidates
Right,
are.
we
That,
will, yeah.
The committee comes back to say, okay, these are like the 3 people that we think, how do the rest of you think about these people? And now, we'll go tour the town with them and see what they think. And,
I think we can definitely, talking about a committee, I think, you know, once we hire one of these organizations, we can have a meeting like this and pick their brain, because I know that I said to Mike today, I feel like I'm throwing a dart with blindfolds on. I don't know this. I'm not an expert in this. I've never done this before. I said to Mark, I'm relying on you for this because he has his dad. I have never experienced this, and I think whoever we select, it would be a good choice for Lisbon. And at that point, we can sit down with them and say, what have you experienced? What type of hiring committees work? What type don't work? And then we can create something. But until we talk with any of these guys or we hire one, I don't think that we should try to presume of how we're gonna have a hiring committee, because maybe they're like, no, I don't want a hiring committee like that. That doesn't work.
I think that's the feeling I got when I was looking through them, was that they would, that's exactly what we'd want them to do, is to work with us to put together the group or the process. I guess the process is what will the lineup of this process be? How will it start? Who will it involve? What will it involve? From start to finish. It's my understanding from looking at all three of the proposals that they fully
Yes. Yeah.
They'll all work with whatever we want to do. So I don't think there's a bad choice, just as you said, Dylan, the choice that would work for the seven of us the best. What do you think, Mike? Do you think it would be possible to get a representative from each of these organizations to come and talk with us, or?
It certainly can, I mean, yes, but whether we can get them Tuesday, I mean, I think
Okay.
the question, I guess a question to ask is if we can't get somebody Tuesday, but we could get somebody, if we could get all three on the 28th, you know, would you put off the hiring somebody until your first meeting?
I think we should.
I would.
I would do it. I think that if it costs us 2 weeks, it costs us 2 weeks. I mean, we have to time this in a way to not try to change managers in the middle of budget season. I think, we don't want to have, you prepare a budget and then somebody new comes in and tries to, defend it would not work.
My budget, maybe you don't want to do.
Right. So, I think at this point, we're in a time where it's going to be, we have the time to take a couple weeks extra if we have to try to get somebody right, do the job correctly, and not rush through it and just take whoever the first person that we get to the dance and marry that person is not the best way to do it.
Just thinking about when we hired Brandon Isaacson to help us with some legal work, the process we went through, and we met with different attorneys, and there were no bad choices, and so the final choice came down to who we all felt that we could work with comfortably, and I think that worked well for us. So I think that it would be a good idea, Mike, if we could see whether they all came on one night or different nights. I don't think it matters. If they all came on one night, it'd be easier for us, but it might be stickier for them.
If one person could get here next week and then the other two, whatever works for their schedule, sort of thing.
Couldn't we also, if they could get, let's say they couldn't make it in 2 weeks, maybe a workshop?
Well, what I was gonna suggest is that if people are comfortable waiting until February what? 4th. People are comfortable waiting until February 4th, the choice. You can see if anybody can come on the 21st, like at 6, so that it would be a workshop, and then the 28th, do a workshop, and then on the 4th, take your votes. You could do that. I mean, if it turns out that everybody, I email everyone and they say, yeah, we'll be there Tuesday night, we'll just set up three times Tuesday night and then,
Just let him do it.
That's,
okay.
I'm good with that. I mean, if we can make the decision sooner, yes, and I'm all for keeping the ball rolling and making decisions in a timely fashion, not dragging our feet. But we want to make them properly, and we want to have the right information, and so I don't think we're dragging our feet in this sense. And I think if you can get everyone here on Tuesday so we can meet them all, that would be great. If you can't, but when we could do it.
Let me ask you this, because you have council meeting's scheduled to start Tuesday at 7. If we don't wanna make this a council item that has to be, could,
We can
is
workshop.
it possible to have a workshop at 6 or 6:30
Yep.
and meet with some?
Yeah,
Or even, I'm available anytime on Tuesday, before the meeting.
on Tuesdays,
Well, I think 2 is out of the question. I mean, yeah.
6 is pretty good.
Okay, so let me, I will contact everybody, probably some emails tonight, but I'll follow, and if I can get anyone on Tuesday, I'll offer them early, so we can meet with them, and then whoever can't make it, we'll find time for,
okay,
because it sounds to me like you want to meet all three.
Yes.
Okay.
if possible. If there's somebody who says we can't get anybody over there, as long as we know ahead of time, we aren't wasting.
Well, if they know they have between now and the 28th to get somebody, I can guarantee they'll get somebody.
Okay.
I mean, I think all three of these firms have a good reputation, what I've heard, so I think any one of the three would be fine. What we wanna do is find the people that have the best process that is gonna help us to get through there, and that's what I wanna talk about, what is their process and how is it better than the competition?
Yeah, Dylan, you made a good point when you said that everybody can make themselves look good on paper. So I think,
Not that I'm saying any of these aren't good, but
no, they all look good. They all do look good, so.
Okay.
I don't think we'll make a bad choice, it's just, let's just make the one that'll be best for us. And I think that's the best way to do it. Everybody good?
I have a procedural question. Apparently, there's a tour scheduled for Saturday.
Yes,
Is everyone going on those?
yes.
And what time? 8?
Usually we start at 8 AM. Come on, you can do it, Mark.
Saturday.
Saturday,
this
8 AM.
Saturday?
Yeah.
Saturday, 8 AM,
It's not snowing.
the 18th.
The chief will have donuts. Last year he
I've got
did.
an appointment down in Scarborough.
All right, well, I will get the recreation bus.
That breaks my heart.
All right.
Oh, you can drive too.
Although, wait a minute, I could get out of
I'm
the.
not sure the bus is.
Well,
We get to ride in the new
I'm
bus.
qualified, if everybody wants to ride with me, I'm qualified to drive it. But you won't drive it.
We have, and remember, we're splitting it into two, we'll do, so it should only take a
And I went
couple
last year.
hours. It should only take a couple
Oh,
hours.
for the water department, because they're gonna be in on it, and they had asked Monday on the schedule. I told them what we do is we start at the police department, and then we go to E.T. Smith, and then they asked if, after E.T. Smith, we could go to Moody Road.
Yeah, you know what, we're doing the fire departments.
Yeah.
We're splitting, we're not doing the fire departments on Saturday. We're splitting it into 2 Saturdays.
Oh, okay.
And we're not doing the fire departments, so we can do
Okay.
it at any point along the way.
Then we'll go from here, then we'll go to, Moody Road, and then to, Borough,
Yeah,
Beaver Park,
And then we
back
Yeah.
down.
have library.
and then we need to
Well,
go,
that's up at this
Yeah,
end. Then we
because
go down.
the Chief Gallipo and Ryan Layton are not available this Saturday, so then a weekend in February, we're gonna do those ones,
Mhm.
so we can get them out of the way.
Although, okay,
it's a holiday weekend
Yeah,
for other people, so.
Ryan hardly ever went. He usually has buttons at the Public Works, and then the other one at the,
Yeah, we're gonna make sure he's with us this year, so.
oh, okay.
And then last but not least, you may have noticed, those of you who are looking that way, that there are, your name tags are up different. And this is my suggestion. I'm uncomfortable sitting and looking like I'm a member of the council. And back in the day, when I was a selectman, we had staff, and Twyla remembers this because we had staff sat at the side, I mean, and they all sat together. Twyla, Kurt, and then whoever else we would bring in, I mean, they would be there, and then the selectmen would sit. Now, when I was chairman, I actually sat all the way over on the side because I wanted to be next to the staff, so when things got signed, we could do it. But, so my suggestion is that, and Twyla's happy with this too, I don't want you to, think that I'm just usurping everything, but my suggestion is we put Twyla here, and I would be here in the blank spot, although I'm told I'm getting a name tag. And then what we did is we just sort of moved everyone down, leaving, of course, the chair and the vice chair the same. But if you don't like, first off, if you don't like this and you want me back here and you're the boss, I'll do that. But, or if you don't like where you're sitting because you want to sit next to somebody else, I mean, we could do that. But we thought, from the standpoint of, I mean, citizens who come here every day, or every meeting, are gonna know that the person sitting here, if it's me, isn't really a counselor, but it just struck me that it broke up the continuity. And the other reason to put the staff over here is the way the camera works is, you know, the elected officials are gonna be the
That's
ones
why I
who are
like
on-
that set.
or-
Thank you very much.
or on TV.
That's why I like to sit beside you, but I'll go.
Well, we can put you back here, Mr. Gary. So if you don't object, this is how we're gonna set it up, you know, from now on, at least, you know, for a while.
That chair all broken in.
And see where we are, so.
You can just wheel your chair around.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it, I think it makes perfect
We'll
sense.
see how it works.
Oh.
You're in the same place.
Yeah, really.
Me
We're in the
too.
same spot. What do you complain about, Lisa? You and Dylan are in the same spot.
True.
Roger, you're right in camera view now.
The only person,
But I ain't
Play for him.
I'm used to sitting next to Roger, I do it.
Greg's in the.
I've done it before, I can do it again.
Move
I
me
think it's
all
a
the
good
way to the
idea,
other end.
Mike. I think it's a good idea.
Good job, Mike.
All right,
So that was all I had. It was just, it seems trivial, but on the other hand, I think that, you know, it's.
It makes it comfortable for you, so that's good.
And I just think that, you know, visitors, you know, this is, it's gonna make it easier for them.
Yeah, I think it makes it clear that it's our meeting too.
We could do that, we could,
just put
you
a
know,
chair
every,
back there.
what we'll do is we'll
Right in the corner.
just
Where
put your
I'm
name
sitting,
tags up
where
in
the
random
camera
order,
points.
they'll have to
Yep.
find the
Yep.
chair. and you have to push
You,
without
buddy.
looking at the name tag.
Yeah.
I won't be able to talk so much.
That's right.
All right, if we're all set,
Lisa, with,
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any questions, but with our new working rules, maybe we're gonna give that time at the end of the workshop for public, I'm not sure.
no, we
Anybody
didn't
but
decide to
Larry.
do that in workshops, but I'd be willing to do it today, I think, because.
No, I think we did in our,
We did.
We'll take
in our meeting rules.
Okay, well, I don't agree with it, but I'm willing to do it today, especially because it was
No.
a pretty intense session. And, I know, Mr. Fillmore is on the edge of his seat, so.
No, I just sit long, you know, I have to move around and I get old like this, you know. Okay?
Really,
The
Roger?
only question I had was the gentleman who gave us the briefing on
NIMS.
NIMS, whatever it is.
That's Keith Ano, and he's the Lisbon Emergency Management Director.
Got Keith,
Yeah.
I didn't get his last name,
Yeah.
that's okay.
And he's a volunteer.
Huh?
He's a volunteer.
Just wanted to let you know.
Nobody, Roger. Nobody.
They're trying to anticipate you, Larry.
Yeah,
I know, that's terrible, cause there's no predicting me, cause I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, the question was, he said that they're having this classroom or classes for this. And my question was, can the public attend these classes? Because he said something about the more people you have qualified, that there's a benefit to grants or whatever.
I'll ask him about that. You know what, the reason we're having a class is because public officials, elected officials, have to do that. And for that class, for the elected officials, it's different from the other kinds of NIMS courses. There are lots of different kinds of NIMS courses with different focus. So, you could ask Keith. He's very approachable, and you have his information.
Yeah, and I'll inquire about what courses available to the public. I think I did say the more people, but I meant the more elected officials, because this class we were talking about today is specifically for elected officials. Having said that, I can certainly get you a list of what classes are available to the general public, and we'll make that available.
Yeah, that was, I just,
Yeah.
be involved in it.
I would think that it would be very beneficial to have every department head included in these classes, just a thought.
Well, and again, I just want to emphasize, the course we're talking about today is designed for, aimed at, and required of elected officials. There are courses that non-elected officials can take. When I was in Wells, I think I actually have like 8 of these courses because of the position I had. But this one tonight, I I don't see why a non-elected official could do it, but it's not as if that's going to help the town.
Mike, maybe we could, maybe if I got, this guy does everything very thorough. So after we get ours done, maybe you'll have one for the department heads, and that might be perfect for them to fit in.
Absolutely, yeah, Got it.
Another comment, question. On town manager search, my daughter and son-in-law live in Falmouth. They have, son and daughter, and grandkids in California. And they Skype. So I don't know anything about it, but I've watched their Skype. And in the town manager search, rather than limiting it to the top 5, maybe the top 10, and if travel and, availability is a problem, maybe you could Skype, say, the top 10 and then narrow it down from there. Just a thought, a suggestion.
We can definitely check that out with the organizations with the different organizations. They do this all the time, so they probably already have it on this is a good thing or this never works list, so, but it's a good thing to ask.
I know Municipal Resources in the past has done like telephone interviews where they'll, talk to candidates on the phone. They probably will do Skype now because that's, you get a face-to-face interview, it's a little bit, you can judge them more than just a voice. Yeah, so I mean, they probably would do that, and they can work with us to use those technologies and stuff that are there.
So
If you have a great candidate in California, there's no reason to fly them out here.
Oh, absolutely.
But you don't wanna miss them out if they are interested in moving. If they wanna move here, it's great if you can do it.
The town council will know who we're hiring.
Absolutely, yeah. No reason you can't bring in a great person from Ohio or Florida, or wherever works.
But to broaden your search.
Okay. Are we set?
I have my marking.
All right,
I know if I were in
Thank
the
you.
council who I.
all right. Then, we don't need to make a motion to close the workshop, do we? It's just a workshop?
You don't have to,
Great, we'll adjourn, and, we'll see you all on Tuesday.
I feel like I never leave.
Bean supper, Saturday night.
10 minutes worth.
The 18th.
Put it in 10 minutes.
Thank you for allowing us to speak and.
All right.
You wanna come to?
What is it?
Bean supper. Thompson Fairgrounds.
Oh.
Thompson.
When is this?
Saturday night. Starts at.
Those trail.
Oh, I'm gonna be working. I'm working.
What time's it at?
Starts at, 4:30.
Oh, Roger.
Skype with my granddaughter, so.